so let's start. So we all familiar sa liabilities naman. So ang next slide ate Gods. Why naman ako signal?
Okay na ga. Hambal lang.
Naman ako signal ko. Good.
Diri na tas definitions ang liabilities. Sige daw, Ken. Nabatian ka. Ken? Ken? Nadula siya, ate. Nadula siya. Padayon ta.
Sige, te.
Okay, liabilities are present obligation of an entity to transfer an economic resources as a result of past event. So, ang tanda lang diri is may aratas ang present obligation and then as a result of past event, which is as a result, mag-transfer ta of economic resources. Amo lang na siyang tanda.
Kat, nadula.
As
Sorry,
liability.
nadula signal.
Sige lang. Next na, Kent, ikaw na.
Sige, ate next slide. So these are the essential characters of accounting liabilities. First, if the entity has a present obligation, then next is the obligation is to transfer economic resources. So amo ning pinaka main point ning kuno sa B, the obligation to transfer of economic resources. And third is the liability arises from the past event. This means that the liability is not recognized until it is incurred. So, amo na yung components ng essential characteristics ng accounting liabilities. Next slide ate. So, next is some example of liabilities. So, first is the accounts payable to the supplier for the purchase of goods. So, balanta naman eh. Next is the amount held from employees for taxes and for contribution to the social security system, warranties, and profit sharing bonus. C is accruals for salaries, interest, rent, taxes, product warranties, and profit sharing bonus. Then D is cash dividends declared but not paid. Letter E is deposit in advance from customers. F is debit obligation for borrowers fund, notes, mortgage, and bonds payable. G, income tax payable, and H is the unearned revenue. Next slide. So measurement of current liabilities. So conceptually, all liabilities are initially measured at present value and subsequently measured at amortized cost. So ang current liability daw is initially measured at present value. Then however, in practice, current liability or short-term obligation are not discounted anymore but measured, recorded, and reported at face amount. So ang reason behind that is ang discount daw or ang difference between the face amount and the present value is not material. So therefore gina-ignore na lang siya. Next ate Gods. My God, ginapupagid ko. Puta, don't tell me na wala na pala ako signal.
Ara ka, Kent, pabatian ka na mo.
Ay. Oh my God. So, next is the measurement of non-current liability. So, sa non-current liability, for example, bonds payable and non-interest-bearing notes. So, the initial measurement is at present value and the subsequent measurement is at amortized cost. So if the long-term note payable is interest-bearing, it is initially and subsequently measured at face amount. So if blah 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 blah. Next slide ate. So ang kuan is current liability. So according to Philippine Accounting Standard 1, paragraph 69 provides that the entity shall classify a liability as current when. So first is the entity expect to settle liability within the entity's operating cycle. B is the entity holds a liability primarily for the purpose of its trading or para sa iyang operation. Then next is the the liability is due to be settled within 12 months after the reporting period. So dapat ang liability is due to be settled within year or 12 months. Then next is the entity does not have an unconditional rights to defer settlement of the liability for at least 12 months after the reporting period. So tandaan na lang kung ang entity is ang entity's normal operating cycle is not cleared. So ang duration sa iyang operating cycle is assumed to be 12 months. So next, Ate Guada.
May question ako.
Go, Ate.
Let's say for example, ang report, ang nakabutang diri is within 12 months ang reporting period. 'Di ba? Ang cut-off is December 31. Then nagkaroon ka ng liabilities after sina. Is it current or ma-consider ba siya nga current with or before siya sa reporting period? Cut-off siya is 20, and let's say for example, cut-off is December 12. Then nagkaroon ka ng liability January 1. Tapos ang reporting period pa ninyo is ang presentation of financial statement rather is March pa. So is it nabilong ba siya sa current liability?
Ano, Ate, liwat daw gani. Ang obligation nag-arise.
Obligation are nag-arise after reporting period, which is December
Which
31.
is December.
Tapos
31.
and then ang presentations ng FS is March 30, for instance. Ganon. Tapos ang obligation is nag-arise siya January 1.
So, kung ang presentation niya is March 31, sir. Ate, it's ma-consider siya is current liability siya gyapon kay ano tawag naman. Kay ang iyang na statement ang operating cycle niya is mag-end siya sa March nga kwan. So masulod gyapon siya sa iyang operating cycle consider as current liability gyapon.
Hindi good.
Ay hindi.
Hindi.
Pero
Kasi,
sa akin
di ba hindi siya? Kasi ang reporting period man good. Let's say for example, January 1 to January 1, 2020 until December 31, 2020. Then January 1, 2021, may nag-arise na liabilities. Something like that. Hindi mo na siya ma-consider as hindi na siya reportable sa imong FS. Kasi for the next naman siya, reporting period na siya. Unless otherwise, exception siya, may mga adjusting entries man abi, may mga may mga liabilities nga ga-arise after reporting period na which is kailangan mo siya i-adjust. Yun siya. Meron ka mo sang insight regarding sini common error abi niya siya. Hello?
wala ate.
Sino to nagambal kanina nga ikaw to ninja no? Ambal mo para sa imo
Oo.
hindi man no?
Oo ate. Oo, hindi siya kay nang naka 12 months na abite kung naglapaw na sa 12 months bisan sa March pa ang reporting period niya, hindi na Japan siya nabilong kay 12 months lang gid ang iyang ang iyang basta amat na siya ate.
Nag-arise man siya after.
Oo, dapat 12 months lang.
Ang question ko is nag-arise siya, hindi to be settled. Pero kung ang question is to be settled, reportable siya as current
Ay,
So, di ba ate, automatic na siya pag December 31, close na gid ng book sang isa ka entity, di ba ate?
Oo, kung reporting period niya is December 31. Tapos, pero may mga instance, nakalimot lang gid ko kung may mga liabilities. Let's say for example, gali to siya kanang provision. Let's say for example, may ara sang litigation, nagkaso-kaso. Tapos may estimate na siya, 'di ba? Tapos
Oo, kay si provision natas is more on best
Oh.
estimate man siya. Wala siya sa uncertain time, di ba ate?
Oo, tapos yan, basta litigation ang instance nga ano siya, pwede mo siya i-adjust. Kung hindi lang ako nagkamali ha, hindi lang ako mag-certain. I-research na lang natin.
Sige po, thank you.
Basta yun siya. Basta ang question is nag-arise after, hindi siya reportable. Pero to be settled after, yun siya, mabilong siya. Ken, ikaw na Ken.
Sige ate, so next slide natin.
Wala ka
So,
na additional Ken?
Wala na ate.
Okay po. Yan.
So next is the non-current liabilities. So the term non-current liabilities is residual definition. So all liabilities, so kumbaga ang non-current liabilities, all tanan nga liabilities nga hindi mo ma-identify as current liabilities is non-current na siya. So including, so first is the non-current portion of long-term debt, financial lease liability, deferred tax liability, long-term obligation to officer, long-term deferred revenue. So wala natin, basta ang hindi na lang ma-identify as current liability is considered na siya non-current liabilities. So next slide ate.
Pwede ko mag-add diri. Kani, wait lang, sige.
Signal.
Wala ka signal Ken. Sige,
Ay.
ani. Covenant na.
Ano din na?
Covenant.
Sorry. So covenants. So covenants are often attached to borrowing agreement which represent undertaking by the borrower. These covenants are actually restriction to the borrower as the undertaking further borrowings, paying dividends, maintaining specific level of working capital, and so forth. So ang key points lang diri is covenants is a financial contract such as bond issues. Tapos ang covenants are legally binding clause. So if ma-breach ang covenant, yes. Kung ma-breach ang covenants, there will be triggered compensatory or other legal actions. So next, Ate Guada for the breach of covenants. So, amo na yan ba kung mag-breach sa covenant? So under these covenants, if a certain condition relating to the borrower's financial situation are breached, the liability becomes payable on demand. So Philippine Accounting Standard 1, paragraph 74 provides that such a liability is classified as current even if the lender has agreed after the reporting period and before the statements are authorized for issue not to demand payments as consequence of the breach. So gina-consider siya as current because at the end of the reporting period, the entity does not have the unconditional right to defer the settlement for at least 12 months after the dates. So, however, there's a instance that the liability is classified as non-current if the lender has agreed on or before the end of the reporting period to provide the grace period ending at least 12 months after that date. Sorry. So next, ate.
Okay. Basta diri sa breach of contract lang, kung let's say, as general rule, kung may breach of contract, automatically,
Is
current
payable
na
on
yun
demand
siya.
ate.
Nagka-current na siya dayon. And then, let's say for example, may settlement before reporting period, dito lang siya ma-classify as a long-term liab. Pero kung after the reporting period na siya, current liab siya dayon. Ano lang.
So the presentation ako. So presentation of the current liabilities. So under paragraph 54 of PAS 1, as a minimum, the face of the statement of the financial position shall include the following line items for current liabilities. So first is the trade and other payables. current provision, short-term borrowing, current portion of long-term debt, and current tax liability. So there is ang term nga trade in other payables including na di ang accounts payable, notes payable, accrued interest on notes payable, dividends payable, and accrued interest. So wala man sang problema if separate mo ang trade kag ang other payables, wala man sang mag-arise nga issue. So next ate. Amo nito nga ba mo kay natin nga may so sa
Ah,
estimated liabilities. So sa provision ni.
estimated. Oo. Mostly kasi ang estimated is sa provision.
Oh.
Next na ta.
So
Ay, sige, okay. Sorry.
estimated liabilities. So liabilities are obligation that exist at the end of reporting period although their amount is not definite or wala ginhambal kung pila. So example is includes the estimated liability for premiums, award points, warranties, gift certificate, and bonus. So ang estimated liabilities is either current or non-current in nature. So ang bal niya tigwada kayo na. So next ate. Kailangan naman tubig. So next
Ano
is
ka
the
mo,
deferred revenue.
Ay, sorry. Okay na. Sige na, Ken.
Sige. So next is the deferred revenue. So deferred revenue or unearned revenue is income already received but not yet earned. Deferred revenue may be realized within 1 year or in more than 1 year after the end of the reporting period. If the deferred revenue is realized within 1 year, it is current liability. So typical example of current deferred revenue are unearned interest income, unearned rental income, and unearned subscription revenue. Kulang na siya, te.
Ay, okay.
So
Sige.
ang tandaan lang gid sa deferred revenue is ang income is already received but ang service is but not earned. Or do wala pa na rendered ang service, kung nakadawat ka lang sa kwarta wala mo pa na render ang service.
May ara ko sang question.
Yo ate.
Ano ang normal balance ng deferred revenue?
Debit balance.
Bakit debit?
Hindi sa ma-explain. So, debit
Credit kasi liability siya.
ay credit. Unearned revenue.
Unearned pa siya mo. 'Di ba naka-receive ka pero hindi mo
Cash.
siya na
Unearned. Tama. Credit side. Cash kag kuan.
Ang iba mag-additional ka mo ha. Kay
Sige.
group study ba yan ni?
Okay lang ate, makatuon na kami sa iyo.
Hindi tanan ta magstorya kay damo pud kung sang hindi nabalaan ninyo.
May i-share ka ate.
Wala na, next na.
Sige, illustration. So, an entity sells equipment service contract agreeing to service equipment for 2-year period. So, the cash receipts from contracts are credited to unearned service revenue and service contract costs are charged to service contract expense. Revenue from service contract is recognized as earned over the service period of the contract. The following transaction occur in first year. So sa first year is naka-receive siya so cash receipt from service contract sold is 1 million, service contracts cost paid is 500,000, service contract revenue recognized is 800,000. So next ate for the journal entry. So first is to record the cash receipt from service contract sold. So first so debit cash, then amounting to 1 million, and the credit unearned service revenue amounting to 1 million. So number 2, to record the service contract cost paid. So service contract expense 500,000 and credit cash which is 500,000. also. Then next is to record the service contract revenue recognized. So debit unearned service revenue, then credits next slide that. Ay okay na pa man ate.
Saan eh?
Nagrambo.
Siguro.
Dapat kay na sa deferred revenue ate.
Okay. Nagrambol guro. Next ko na lang.
Oo.
Okay na
Sige ate. Next is the gift certificates.
10
payable.
minutes na lang ha. Ay, wala pa gali. Sorry. May ara ko sang wait lang. Before ta magpadayon, Kent.
Sige ate.
Dito ta sa exercise. Kay tapos naman ang liability, ang current. Kag long term, kag current, kag non-current. Tanay? Mag-exercise tanay. 18. Para another exercise naman mamaya. Okay lang sa inyo? Okay lang sa inyo?
Oo, ate. Oo, ate.
Ari.
Okay lang.
Ari, ansiran ta. Tapos mag-sharing ta dayon. Ang question, ipakita ko na yung question ha. Karabalan niyo ang question. Amo na ang question. Basahaan na ninyo. Kay parabalan ninyo. Ang question lang is what is current liability and non-current liability. Pwede ka mo mag-open mic.
Mano tate ay sample practice.
Oo, Ari.
Okay lang.
Pwede mag-open mic sa kanan.
Sige, ate.
Okay.
Sino ang mag-pass?
Number 1.
Or 50 short.
Sino basa sa number 1?
Ako na, ate.
Sige.
So, halinon ko sa taas, ate, sa problem. Or number 1 na lang
Hindi na.
diretso.
Ay, pwede man.
Sige.
Sige, as from the top ka na lang.
Sige. Boomerang Incorporation is a manufacturer and retailer of household furniture. Your audit of the company financial statements for the ended December 31, 2018 discloses the following debt obligations of the company at the end of the reporting period. Boomerang's financial statements are authorized for issuance on March 6, 2019. So number 1, 150,000 short-term obligation due on March 1, 2019, its maturity could be extended to March 1, 2021, provided Boomerang agrees to provide additional collateral. On February 12, 2019, an agreement is reached to extend the loan's maturity to March 1, 2021. So, number...
Current or non-current?
Hindi lang.
Short term.
Short term, current, ate?
Pag short term, di ba current na siya, ate?
Oo.
Short-term obligation siya, pero ang hambal niya, its maturity could be extended. Pwede siya ma-extend sa March 1, 2020. Then, provided Boomerang agrees to provide additional collateral. So, may other statement siya nag-support. So, ano siya? Current siya or non-current liability?
Non-current.
Kung
Bakit siya
magsugot si
non-current?
Boomerang, ate.
Bakit siya non-current? Sino nagsabi na
Doon
non-current?
nag-agreement.
Non-current.
Why non-current?
On February 2, 2019, nag-agree na sila nga extend ang loan to March 1, 2021. So, that's beyond 12 months ang ilang, tama.
Tama.
Ano siya? Non-current?
Tama.
Non-current.
Sino ang
Non-current
naghambal na current?
Wala na.
Sino
Eh, yun na,
naghambal
Karen. Okay, di ba, ate? Unprovided. Agrees to provide. Provided, agrees.
Ang basahon ninyo is, on February 12, 2019, the
Oo.
agreement is reached to extend the loan's
Wala
maturity.
signal.
Ibig
Ay,
sabihin,
tama. Ay, tama
Ah.
ate, tama.
ano, sige daw, explain.
2019, kahit 2019 parang gali nag-agree na siya tapos March 1 tong obligation mag-mature. Tapos nag-agree na siya tong February pa lang, ate.
Sige, ang Ivan.
February.
Ano
February, February 29.
Ano to answer mo, Ti Guada?
Current na siya.
Ay, current?
Current
Yes.
lagi siya, te. Kaya wala pa, agrees pa lang man siya, di ba? Wala pa man si ano.
Ano daw?
Sa-
Na-current siya.
On February 12,
Eh.
2019, an agreement is
non-current.
reached to
Bakit
extend.
non-current? Sige, defend your answer.
Eto.
Sige,
Hello.
go.
Ako muna.
Sige, Christian. Pagbigyan nato si Christian kay insist yun siya na.
Ito sa akin question ng sabi dun sa may an agreement to refinance or to reschedule payment on a long-term basis is completed after the reporting period and before the financial statement are authorized for issue. So, kailan ba yung yung financial statements are authorized for issue? Di ba tuwing ano yun? Anong April 20 o ano?
Basahin mo sa
Fiscal
taas.
year.
Nasa taas.
Taas.
Nasa taas.
Where?
December 31,
Ayun,
2018.
December 2018.
No. Reporting
So,
period yan siya.
March 6.
March,
March
wait lang.
6, March 6, 2019 ang issuance. Then, ang reporting period is December 31, 2018.
Mm.
So, what will happen? Is it current or non-current?
Current siya, ate. Kaya mag-due man ang obligation sa March 1, 2019.
Ano sa akin, non-current. Di ba yung 31-2018, yun yung yung reporting period. Tama
Yes.
po ba?
Yes po.
Then yung kasi March
6.
yung
March 6.
March 6.
Issuance.
Issuance.
So, February 12, 2019. So, February 12, 2019, after siya ng reporting period, but before siya ng issuance. So, pasok siya sa non-current asset. Ay, tama ka rin. Hindi, non-current asset. Wait lang.
Sige. Sige, Ken. Ikaw nag-report
Sige.
na, Ken.
Ken, ano sagot? Wait lang. Nasabog yung ulo ko sa advance accounting.
Ano ka pa? Hyper ka pa
Sa awa man po.
Nahu. Sige.
Number 2? Number 2 ka na, ate Guad.
Wala pa tapos number
Ay.
1.
Tawa.
Number 1.
Ano number 1 mo? Linya.
Ako, ate, current.
Why?
Kay short term obligation tapos bete ng February 12, 2019 tong hambal ko kay natin nag-agree na siya nga ma-extend sa March 1, 2021 ang katong maturity sang iya nga obligation ti nang siya nang bisan mag-extend pa siya pero nang current Japon siya kay naagrihan man nga mag-extend.
May mali lang siya gamay.
At least gamay lang ate.
Sure lang. Hindi actually parang ito. Ang classification niya is current. It's because of even though may ara sila sang agreement to extend until March 1, 2021, ang agreement ang na-provide nila is ari sa statement out. Si Boomerang agrees to provide additional collateral. Tapos ang additional collateral is February 12, 2019 pa na reach. Big sabihin after na sa reporting period. Basta after na sa tandaan lang ninyo nga kung after reporting period na siya. current na siya dayon.
Dili siya ka.
Case to case basis na lang
Mhm.
yung masulod gihapon siya. May mga adjusting liabilities kasi. Pero kaning siya nga instance is kasi a short-term obligation siya kasi may agreement sila. 'Di ba? Ang agreement nila is maghatag siya ng collateral. Pero it was perfected February 12, 2019. So, tapos na ang reporting
Ah.
period. So, nabilong siya sa current liability. So, sa December 31, 2018, current na siya. Okay.
Okay.
Sige. Number 2. Kent, imo ni repair Kent ha.